One of my favorite stories that's kind of about this is a story that is told about the late Peter Marshall. And Peter Marshall was in the 40s, the 1940s. He was the chaplain to the United States Senate, and he's kind of a famous person in the United States religious circles, I guess. But he was talking with someone who had been extremely successful in business, and when he was pleased to realize the power of God before he was extremely successful and was really just kind of moderately successful. He was really able to realize the power of God and the presence of God in his life and in the way he lived his life. But then he became extremely overly successful in business, and he had a hard time with this. He had a hard time realizing that this success might also be a part of God. And the story goes is that the man came to Marshall and said, I have a problem. This has to do with giving. He says, I have a problem. I've been tithing, which is giving 10% of your income. I've been tithing for some time, and it wasn't too bad when I was making $20,000 a year. I could afford to give $2,000. Just so you know, $20,000 about that time is like equivalent to $275,000 today. So that's kind of the ballpark here. So he said, when I was making 20 grand, which was a lot of money then, he said, I could afford to give $2,000, but you see, now I'm making $500,000, which is the equivalent of like $7 million today, okay? I'm making $500,000, and there's just no way I could afford to give away $50,000 a year, which I guess 10% of 7 million is like, what, 700,000 or something like that? Yeah, okay, that shouldn't have done that. It can be dangerous. You're just moving decimal points, but I didn't write that down. And so, but like, you know, I could afford to give 2,000, but I can't afford to give 700,000. I mean, that's a lot of money. And it's not all that important realizing what the finances there is. But then Peter Marshall was reflecting on this man's dilemma and realizing that he really did have a problem of realizing God's presence and power in his life. And he simply said, yes, sir, you know, I see that you do have a problem here, and I think that we ought to pray. Is that okay? And of course, the man, Peter Marshall's respected. He's the Senate chaplain, and the man said, of course, yes, please pray with me. And Peter Marshall prayed with boldness and authority, the story is told. And he says, dear Lord, this man has a problem, and I pray that you will help him. Lord, reduce his salary back to the place where he can afford to tithe. What this story highlights is it's not about the amount, but it's that abundance and breakthroughs and miracles will sometimes, perhaps oftentimes, produce greed and produce a feeling of self-sufficiency that you did this and it's all about you. And it's so important to be on guard against this, because it's not about the amount of money, it's about the heart of realizing the presence of God in your life.